Thank you so much for having me. First, I just want to thank the Women in Tech Festival, as well as the Silicon Valley Forum, as well as specifically Denise and Mandy for creating this opportunity for me to share a few words with you. So without further ado, let me tell you a bit about my life story. So this is the Instagram version, the one that makes all the sense when you go through it. So I grew up in Russia, dreaming of coming to the United States one day. I had the opportunity to come here when I was 12 because my mom won the green card in the lottery. So I'm an actual lottery winner. That's pretty freaking cool. I studied finance and entrepreneurship. So I'm one of the very few humans on this planet that is actually precisely applying her major to a startup in fintech. I used credit cards to move myself out west to start my first business. I joined Google in 2007. I started Upstart in 2012 to help give access to a fairly priced credit to everyone, because given my own experience, I believe access to credit is access to opportunity. So this idea just made a ton of sense to me. And then of course, in 2020, we took the company public, and that's been a super exciting ride ever since. So here's also my life story. So that's me in the middle with my mom and grandma. When I arrived to America, I spent the first 2 years cleaning houses with my mom. I could not get a job when I graduated from college. Yes, I had this fancy finance and entrepreneurship major, but all my friends were going off to Wall Street, and I did not want to go to Wall Street, and I could not figure out how to get myself started. So I tried my first 2 startups. They both failed. And eventually I joined a McMaster car company, which is a industrial supplies distributor, which was a complete cultural misfit. Then I finally landed at Google and things started to look up, except I volunteered for this project that had me literally on call for every single outage that Google had over about a 3-year period, which was a lot. Then I spent about 8 years at Upstart in various modes of like near-death experiences and trying to keep this startup going. And then we took the company public. And so I just share that with you because I don't think we spend enough time in our society being really honest about just how not linear our career paths are, how random and sometimes serendipitous and sometimes difficult situations come in front of us. I call it like they're random pianos that just follow the sky all the time, and you just have to deal with them. And I wanted to kind of give you both flavors of my story. So I'm someone who really collects advice and people. And throughout my life, I've been very fortunate to work with some really incredible humans. And so, and I've been very deliberate about seeking out mentors, advisors, sponsors, just really people that can help me, help guide me through my personal and professional growth. And what I'd love to share with you today is some of the most profound advice that I've received throughout the course of my career. Now, of course, I'll preface this with, this is advice that worked for me and resonated for me. And I, of course, have my own set of like assets and liabilities and things I'm good at, things I'm bad at, and my own life story. So by all means, like take what you like and discard the rest. But I thought I would boil down some of the lessons I've learned over my 20-ish years of career. So the first lesson comes from, having a little trouble navigating my slides. So the first lesson is take every opportunity as a chance to prove how good you are. And I got this advice when I was working at McMaster Car Company, which is an industrial supplies distributor. When I got there, it was a rotational management program, and I was coming out of a failed fashion startup. So they said, you know, we're going to hire you and you're going to rotate from department to department. Your job is going to be to make things better, faster, cheaper. So I sort of assumed, you know, they'd have me starting in like sales or marketing, you know, something like this. And I showed up on my first day and they said, okay, Anna, here's your voucher. Go get your steel-toed boots. You're going to be working in the warehouse. What? So I spent 2 years managing various warehouse operations, which was like a lot of men on forklifts, and then myself. It was a pretty challenging learning environment. But I got this best piece of advice ever from one of my early managers, which is, you know, I was coming to him like all full of angst of like, I'm ready to be promoted and I should be in a different department and this doesn't make sense. And he was like, look, Anna, use every opportunity to prove how good you are. It doesn't matter how small. If it's the way that you write an email email, maybe somebody sees that email and that's the only interaction they have with you for an entire year. And that's going to be their impression. Like, find a way to be useful before asking me about the next opportunity. And I've really taken that to heart. And like, since then, I always look for small ways to go above and beyond, whether that's like volunteering to take an action item at the end of the meeting, like raising my hand for the next area of responsibility, jumping into do little, I know it's more controversial now to take notes in meetings, but like I would do that just so I would have an opportunity to be in some meetings that maybe I wouldn't be invited in otherwise. And now that I'm kind of 20 years out from that experience and I hire a lot of really young people, one of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody shows up and like they're ready for the next job. Like they don't yet know how to do the job they were hired to do, but they're ready for what the next opportunity is. My kind of biggest takeaway is get really good at what you do it quickly, find a way to improve it, and then just develop a reputation as someone that can be depended on to do a great job. In the end, opportunities tend to flow to those that deliver, period, and no opportunity is too small. My next piece of advice, and the title for this talk, is raise your hand before you're ready. So you've probably heard the following statistic. It's been widely quoted, but that men apply for a job when they meet only 60% of the qualifications, but women apply only if they meet 100% of them. This finding comes from a Hewlett-Packard internal report and has been quoted in books like Lean In, The Confidence Code, and just tons and tons of articles. LinkedIn did an interesting follow-on study and found that despite viewing the same number of jobs as the male users on the platform, women are less likely to apply for positions they viewed on the website in general, and less likely to apply for positions that were more senior than their current position. Now, the good news is women are more likely to get the jobs that they apply for, but that supports that same narrative that we tend to reach for goals that are more firmly within our grasp. I firmly believe that the trajectory of your career is really the sum total of all the decisions you make and the number of stretch opportunities that you reach for. And my belief is even failing at these opportunities is likely to generate way more learning and will set you up for a better next opportunity than staying nice and comfortable operating in your safe zone. And I wanted to share a personal story of kind of how this played out in practice. And this was one of the things that completely changed the trajectory of my career. So I was working at Google during the time that we had a really famous Gmail outage. Basically, we took down the whole site. It was down for like 8 hours. We handled it horribly as a company. It took us about 4 hours to even acknowledge publicly that this was going on. And by then, it was all over the Twitter sphere. There was this Gmail fail whale meme everywhere. And it was just kind of a facepalm type of moment in the company. Now, one of my favorite sayings is a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. So this internal crisis generated all this excitement inside of Google of let's figure out how to create a better outage communication process. Let's get a better handle on this. And I was really junior. There was no reason that I should have been anywhere near that project. But just so happened that the logical person to work on this project, my boss, Jessica Berneski at the time, happened to be out of office. She was the director of our consumer organization. It would have made sense for her to do it, but she wasn't there. And then the next person it makes sense to take on this project, his wife went into labor. And so we're all sitting in this meeting kind of looking around like, oh gosh, like who's going to run with this? And because I had kind of that research and those words in the back of my mind, I literally took my elbow and like shoved my hand up because there's a part of me that was like, I can't do this. But I was like, I'll do it. I'm going to run with it. And so I spent the weekend freaking out. I had no clue how to get started, but that project ended up exposing me to a whole bunch of Google leaders that I never would have had the opportunity to work with. Most importantly, that's how I met my co-founder, Dave. And actually, ultimately, I ended up building the google.com like status page, which actually ended up my like crown career accomplishment at Google. And also was one of the things that made Dave feel like I would be a good co-founder because he saw me solve some pretty difficult challenges across Google. And so it completely changed the trajectory of my life. So what I want to just leave you with is there's no perfect time to get in the ring. And don't negotiate against yourself. Like, let the world tell you no. Let the world tell you, you know, you didn't pass that interview or no, we're not going to give you that job. But raise your hand, ask. You never know what amazing opportunity can come out down the line. And you're never going to feel really, really ready particularly if it's the right shape. stretch opportunity. The next great piece of advice I received was don't leave before you leave. Now, I'm sure many of you might have read LinkedIn, Lean In, so you might know where this quote comes from. But when I was at Google, I had the privilege of working within Sheryl Sandberg's organization. So she was the manager that after several layers, I reported into back before she was famous. So I like to say I knew Sheryl when she was on vinyl, but she's been beating this drum of don't leave before you leave. And the concept there in a nutshell is when women start to think about having a family and having a child, they tend to consciously or unconsciously take their foot off the gas pedal of their career, and they stop reaching for new promotions, taking on new projects. And they start doing that pretty early on. And then what happens is, if you start taking your foot off the gas pedal, what happens is your job ends up being less and less interesting. So by the time you actually have a child and you have something really compelling competing for your attention at home, and you come back into a workforce and your job is not that interesting and your peers are ahead of you, it just becomes not that viable to want to stay in the workforce. So her big advice was like, look, even if you are you have a partner, you're ready to make a baby, you're going for it, it still might take several months to get pregnant, another 9 months to make that baby, et cetera. And so don't leave before you absolutely have to leave. Keep taking the opportunities, keep making your career interesting. And then you have something really compelling to compare yourself to kind of compare when you're deciding if you want to come back to the workforce or not. And so what you see here is a photo of my son, Tristan, at 6 weeks at his first Upstart meeting. So you might know where the story ends. But basically, when I started to consider leaving Google to start Upstart with Dave, this was at the time where Google had notoriously one of the best maternity leave policies in the Valley. Now, again, it's become more table stakes, but at the time it was pretty unprecedented. And I had just gotten married. I knew family was on the horizon. It seemed completely bonkers to pick that time to leave the safety net of Google and go to a startup. But because I had the distinct pleasure of working with Sheryl for all those years, I had her voice in the back of my head saying, don't leave before you leave, like leave when you actually have this baby. And so I ended up having a very awkward conversation with Dave about like, well, what do you think our maternity leave policies are going to be? And he was like, whatever is fair for a Series A startup. But I decided to take the leap anyway. And I'm not going to lie, it was probably I ended up getting pregnant about 6 months into Upstart. It was definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done in my career. We actually ended up having to pivot the company, and I was responsible for the pivot, like right as I was like re-emerging out of having a baby. So I was pumping in the bathroom, in our shared bathroom, and crying like on my way home. It makes me teary-eyed to like even think about that time. But the beautiful aspect of it is, 8 years later, I have this beautiful son, Tristan, and this amazing startup. And so, so don't leave before you leave. And, I share this example because it's personal to me because of a child. But, if you're making room for a project, for taking care of a sick parent, for, buying a new house or whatnot, keep the pedal to the metal until you can't. And that will give you the most interesting opportunities to look at when you're making a decision to stay or go from the workforce. Next, figure out what growth feels like. So one of the things I want to impart here is that you can't really find where your edge is until you go past it once in a while. Like if you stay comfortable in your safe zone, you're not really going to know like where's the limit of your current ability and how do you push past that? So in my own personal experience, I have this personal rule that if I'm not doing something at least once a quarter that I'm pretty scared to do, I'm probably not pushing myself hard enough. And if that happens for a couple of quarters in a row, like alarm bells start going off that I need to start doing something very differently. Now, growth doesn't actually feel good when it's happening. At least it doesn't to me. Maybe there's people out there that feel great, but to me, it usually feels scary, uncomfortable. And it's only when you're on the other side of that that you can really, truly appreciate the value of that experience. So I would recommend kind of try to figure out what growth feels like in your like body and mind. And when you see it, like label it like, oh, I'm feeling like this because I'm growing. Okay, like I know this feeling. And then there's this natural response when you are on the like operating on that edge of just work harder, just like run faster on the treadmill, work more hours, like put more elbow grease in there and you're going to get there. But I would actually argue like that's the time to really, when you feel that feeling of growth, that's the time to take a step back and ask yourself, like, has the game changed? Am I now like, do I now need to operate at the next level? And what does that next level look like? And so, the analogy I like to use is, if you're at work and you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole, like you can't use a teaspoon, like maybe you need to think about like a shovel or maybe even like a digger or a tractor, you need some different tools. And, if you're a manager or people leader, like maybe it means that you're too in the weeds and you're not leveraging people around you enough. If you're an individual contributor, maybe you're just playing the game the wrong way. Like there are people at the next level that are doing this with ease. Why aren't you? What's the difference there? And so I think I would recommend understanding what that feeling feels like, labeling it and taking a step back to see like, what can you change and retool so that you're not operating in that like feeling of overwhelm, which is like not a great place to live long-term. And, everyone is going to have a different way of dealing with that. One trick I'd love to share with you that I find really helpful is to do this exercise called like, if I were. And so the picture here you have, this is Jocelyn Ding. She was my manager at Google. She was, her company was acquired by Google. She was a co-founder of a company that was acquired by Google for $500 million. She's just a complete rock star and the most deeply thoughtful, well-regarded, like put together operational leaders I've ever met in my whole life. And so when I find myself in this like place of overwhelm, what I like to do is think, okay, if Jocelyn were to come in and take my job tomorrow, what would she do and what would that look like? And I literally have a doc that's called If I Were. That stands for if I were good at this. And I will write out like, okay, she would hire a leader that looks like this. She would look at these set of metrics. They would improve in this way. She would, get the team inspired and like ready to tackle this challenge. She would, whatever it is that she would do if she was in my shoes. And I will literally write that out. And what I find is just the exercise of picturing someone else that you really admire, who has all the qualities you wish to have, but don't yet have. Using that frame of mind is allows me to quiet that part of myself that's telling me like, you're not good enough, you can't do this, you're never going to figure it out. It lets that part of my brain just be quiet. And then actually, once I get a plan on paper, I find that it's actually, I can navigate through anything. And once I have a plan, I can actually execute it. So again, that's my hack. You might have a very different hack, but I would encourage you to figure out what growth looks like and try like pushing against it once in a while so that you can continue to challenge yourself and grow. And then last but not least, you can't grow one half of yourself faster than the other. So at one point in my career, I was very lucky to be selected to be part of this like women leadership program. And as part of that program, I was assigned a mentor. Now, I am not a huge fan of assigned mentorship programs. I feel like they're like you're being set up on a blind date and then expected to have a deep personal relationship with someone after, and it's just not that likely to happen. But, I'm like a high achieving kind of person. So I really wanted to do a good job. So I show up to my first meeting and I have my list of goals. And it's like, I want to get promoted on this time frame. I want to manage international teams. I want to like improve my analytical skills. And I was running through my list with my mentor, Antonio, and he looks at me and goes, okay, that's great. And what are some of your personal goals? And it completely stopped me in my tracks. I was like, personal goals? I don't have any personal goals. I'm trying to get my career like as far as I possibly can. What are you talking about? And he said to me, and this has really stayed with me, is Anna, I would wager that you can't grow this half of yourself faster than this one. And it was like, I just never really appreciated that. And so he went on to elaborate, like, imagine this, you have a bad day at work, you're dealing with a hard problem. You come home and you're on edge and you take it out on your family. And then you have kind of a tough night with your family. Then you don't sleep as well because you're worried about the work thing and the family thing. Now you wake up the next morning, you go to work, you're more depleted, you're less likely to be creative, you're less likely to kind of figure out an optimistic view and come up with a plan on how to solve the problem. It also works in reverse. So let's say you have a weekend that really nourishes your soul. And, it's going to be different for different people. It might be spending time with family. It might be spending time in nature. It might be spending time curled up in a book with a book. But, whatever it is that you love to do that makes you feel connected and energized and positive. And then you get a good night's sleep, go into work, some problem lands on your lap, you're going to be much better able to creatively problem solve, to get other people to want to help you if you come at it with like a positive frame of mind. And so I can't stress this enough. Like, I think, and this has taken me a really long time to get here, but continuing to like be maniacally focused on just one aspect of your life actually ends up being a bit limiting in terms of how far you can take your career. And it's really pretty important to kind of grow both your personal side and your career side, like at the same time, because that's how you end up being a full person. And then one more lesson I will kind of tie into this, which I think is important, is the importance of, if you're going to be a whole person at work, like be your true self. And I'm someone who throughout my entire career, I've gotten advice of the flavor of like, you're too nice, you sound too junior, you talk too much, you try to be too friendly, like people are not going to follow you. You're limiting yourself in the way that you show up. And I've definitely done a fair bit of grappling, and I've like tried to be a little different. But what I found over time is that I can't just put on like a different suit, like one pant leg at a time of someone else's personality and show up to work that way. It just, you spend too much time at work. It just, you can't do it. And so what I've decided to do is just, embrace who I am, which is, someone who it does tend to be more friendly and does tend to be more emotional. As you can see, I very much do cry at work or during talks, and it's just who I am. And then I hope that kind of over the next 20 years, there's opportunity for all types of different leadership profiles to thrive in business and in technology, because I actually think, diversity of thought, diversity of leadership styles is really important. And the more we can give each other permission that like, there's not just the one type of, scary, deep voiced, like you're going to do this or not kind of leadership, the kind of more successful we're going to be as like a society and the human race. And we've got a lot of problems that, we need to solve. So those are the top 5 pieces of advice I've received. I just want to end with one other quick story. So back when I was 20, in my 20s, my best friend and I decided to splurge on a 1-day vacation to Napa. So we like saved all our money and we got this one night of hotel room. And while we were there, we met this woman, and she just seemed bigger than life to us. So we were in our early 20s. We were so lost in like what we were going to do with our life. And she seemed like she had it all figured out. So she was in her early 40s. She was beautiful, dressed to the nines. She was a PhD from Oxford, and her job was to fly around the world and advise CEOs on how to be their best selves. So she just seemed amazing. And so we started to ask her about her life and how she got there. And it turns out she had a really non-traditional path. So she never got married, she never had kids, but she got into this career path pretty late in life, but she had this really glamorous, beautiful life that she built. So we asked her like, so, what did that feel like? Like, what's it like to be you? And her answer I thought was really interesting, which is like, look, there's no like perfect kind of life that you can have. There's no formula. So, when I was younger and my friends were getting married, I felt like their life was better and I felt a little left out. And then they were all stuck at home with small children. Their marriages weren't going so well when small kids don't really help you in that department. And she was like, and my life was better because I was traveling around and giving talks and having this beautiful life. And, something else will happen and their lives will be better. And then my life will be better. And that's just how it goes. And I found that insight to be really profound. And it's taken me, again, years to get here. But the reality is like, there is no formula. Like if you just, go to the best school, work for the best company, have this title, have 2.5 kids, whatever your version of like success looks like, there's no checklist that feels good all the time, that is going to make you feel fulfilled all the time. It's really every life you pick, every career path you pick is going to have its set of highlights and its set of lowlights. And really the magic is in enjoying the journey. So in summary, Here are a few of my takeaways, but my biggest advice to you is get in the game. Don't wait until the circumstances are perfect, until you're perfect, until you've checked all the boxes to be ready for the next opportunity. Just be open to grabbing opportunities. And the more you do that, the more you practice, the more you take chances, the more time at bat you get, the more likely you are to create outsized opportunities and change the trajectory of your career from something that feels really safe and comfortable to something that can have some like real excitement. Business is personal, so do not forsake your personal self for the sake of work. You can actually harmoniously grow both sides of yourself together, and that's what makes really beautiful and interesting leaders. And if you're not sure how to get started, I would encourage you to check out the careers page on upstart.com, because we are a sponsor. So thank you all. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Anna. Wow, she dropped some serious gems on us today. What a powerful, inspiring talk. So thank you very much. So with that, I think we're ready to introduce our